Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is the second video in working with Sapper. So in our first video we just kind of basically set up the project. We didn't really edit anything yet, and now we'll get into editing things. So basically most of the work I'm going to be doing needs to be done in this source folder. So I'm going to go into there. Let me just collapse the components folder for a moment, and I'm going to start with template. Template.html is actually sort of a HTML wrapper that'll use when it renders your website. Okay, so basically there's a lot of little notes here as far as where you can put stuff. The main thing I want to do is I want to add a CSS framework. I generally like to use Milligram when I'm just doing quick projects, so I'm going to do that. Great thing about Milligram is that unlike using like Bootstrap or whatnot, you don't have to bother putting any classes. It just styles the actual HTML elements and they just work. It just looks nice. Cool. And then but you could also put in your own CSS sheet here. And if you really want to, you can configure rollup to use something like Sass or something. I'm not going to bother doing that right now. That would be me if I were doing a video series on rollup, which I may do at some point. I haven't done a video on Webpack yet, I think. I've done some work with Webpack, but I don't think I've done a video on Webpack. But let me add the framework. Okay, so there's my link tags. I'll just save it and let Prettier do the work, or not. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So again, basically, this is where you can stick, stuff, your meta tags, all in this template file. Okay, critical for the current page. CSS and rest. This contains the content of the felt head. Yeah. Okay, so that's just saying, making that point. And this is essentially where it's going to render your index.html. So basically here in this div is where it's going to generate your website. I mean, you can edit this and do something different if you want, but that's where it is unless you decide to change it. And let's say I did want to change this. So right now, where does Sapper get told to actually render your website here? I think it's here in client.js. Yep. So right here it says, hey, start Sapper, and you're going to target this div here. So if you wanted to change it, that's where you would change it. And then this is server.js. This actually uses Polka. You could switch it over to Express, which is what I'm more used to. So at some point later, I'm going to have to go do some reading up on Polka to see how different it is in Express, so that we can actually create, individual routes. So if you wanted to create like an API, you would do it in here. You can create like API routes, interact with like a database, do all that fun stuff. Cool. And then basically, without further ado, then we can now go into the routes folder. Okay, so basically the core of the website here is the index route. And if you're not familiar with Svelte, the actual UI library, basically the syntax is just basically, it's kind of like Vue, where basically CSS, HTML, and JavaScript is all in the same file. So let me just, I already have Milligram, so I'm actually going to get rid of all the styling for the moment. And you can just do that. Basically there's like 3 tags. You can do HTML tags, then you put your CSS in a style tag, and then you put your JavaScript in a script tag, and it just works. And then as far as reactive data, it's just anytime there's a variable assignment, it reacts. So you don't have to like worry about like setting up state or creating a data object or creating a class with data. Nope. Just create data. Whenever the data gets reassigned, the application will react, which is very nice. But let's kind of break this down. So this is going to be the template. Yep. Right here. So where basically it'll pick up on the HTML and use it as a template. So here there's no JavaScript either. Okay. But basically what happens here is that this felt head tag is what pulls in from the template, the head part. And then here's just the body of the website, H1, great success. We're going to change that. So what I'm going to do is down here, I'm going to put a script tag. So that way we can do some JavaScript just to kind of again, reacquaint ourselves with how Svelte works. And we're just going to create a variable. So my const, or const equal, or const title equals, what shall it equal? Alex Merced's productivity app. Okay, save, and then if I remember right, I think it's, I forget if it's 2 curly brackets or 1 curly bracket, but we'll give it a shot. So here we'll put title. Okay, let's save, and let's go back and see if it updated. Failed to. Yep, there he goes. Alex Merced productivity app. Okay, and then you see some of the styling has kind of changed because I took off all the CSS that was on that page. Okay, Alex Merced productivity app. And so, and then figure. I'm not sure what this figure tag does. I was looking to see if it was a custom component in here. I don't see that, and so I'm not sure where it's coming from, but I'm going to get rid of it. I don't need it. It's probably in the docs. If we need it, we'll come across it. Okay. Now I am going to want to center that title. So I am going to do a style tag. Okay, and then in here I'll do the H1 text align center, and let's see where we're at. Good. Cool. So again, there's not much there, but you can see that how you just literally edit these Svelte files, and again, basically HTML that's outside of the script and style tags will be treated as a template. And then you can put, you can plop in variables by just putting in curly brackets, and you literally just have to declare the variables. So it's pretty straightforward. That's what I like about Svelte. It's just really easy to work with, and because it's compiled, so you don't have to necessarily import the whole library with the resulting code, your bundles are going to be a lot smaller, so you end up with a really fast loading websites. And then with Sapper, you can now do all the cool server-side rendering stuff, which you're about to get into, which makes life real easy. So let's say I want to create another page. I could just copy this. I'm just going to duplicate this file, and we'll call it cheese.svelte. Okay. And here on cheese.svelte, I'm going to just change the variable here, title, to cheese. Okay, so it's going to keep the same header. It's otherwise the same. I will save that. I'm not sure why it's giving me a error. Let's see what it says here. Error, cannot redeclare block scope variable. I guess because I already declared it before, so I'll just call it title2 just to play it safe. Okay. But notice it's cheese.svelte. So long as it's in the routes folder, it's treated as an actual route. So watch this. So here I'm in the main route, and if I go to /cheese, ta-da, I'm on this page. So then I can just literally, you know, make this page here, and that's done. That's really nice. Cool. Now whenever you see these files that have an underscore before them in the routes folder, it means to not use them as a route. So there is no route called layout. This file is going to show whatever you want to show when there's an error. So if you want to edit what appears when, so if I were to go to 4, 5, 6, 7, just make up a route, it should error because there's no such route. And see, I get this 404 not found. That's just essentially this file right here. Okay. And let me just see how it works here. We have the head. So see, it's just printing out status H1. That was the 404. And then the error message, page not found, as a paragraph tag. So if you want to change how that looks, that's where you would do it. This is just your standard layout for like the page in general. Okay. So here there's not much. It's just saying, hey, every page there's gonna be the nav at top, and then we'll slot in the component right here. So the slot is essentially where the component's gonna go. And then it's just saying, hey, there's a main tag. So if you wanted to change the layout of the page, you could do that here. If you wanted something that appears on every page, on every route. Okay. So you wanted to if I wanted to put a footer here. Then I just put cheese. I don't know why that's my go-to word. Save. Now if I refresh. No, let me go to home. Let's see. Did I save this? Oh, it's still rebuilding. Okay, let's see here. Let's try this again. Yep, and then you see cheese appears at the bottom. And then if I go to the cheese route, it should still be there. Because see, now it's part of the template. The part that's dynamic is this middle part now. So that's a thing. Cool. And then you can do subroutes. So if I do a subfolder, now it becomes like root/blog/name of the route. Now see how this particular route here has like the square brackets around it? That means it's a dynamic route. So that means the route isn't actually slug, it's whatever you type into the URL bar. So let me see what they do here. How do they grab the variable? Okay, const res wait.fetch blog params.slug. Okay, so there's just gonna be a variable called params. Okay, and here we go. And again, the CSS is always local, so that's there. But pretty straightforward. I guess you would just use params as for anywhere you need it. Res.status, data.message. There's a lot of other variables here that I'm sure if we explore the documentation we'll kind of get in there, but the main thing here is that you can pull in that parameter with params.slug. Preload. Okay, and then this is how you get access to it. Okay, so export async function preload. The slug parameter is available because this file is called slug.file. I get that. And that's the cool thing about the template. It has a lot of documentation inside of it. But essentially this is just like, we have a bunch of fake blog posts that are here. No, not there, here in this file. So that way you can test it out. So now if I go over here and I click on blog, see it has all these blog posts. I click on it, that becomes a slug. See, there's no route for how can I get involved, but that name is a slug, and it uses the slug to go pull up which file from that JavaScript object and that other file to pull from. So that's pretty cool. Cool. And then here, components. So here's like the navigation. So the components folder is where you put components that are not necessarily a whole page, but will be part of a page. So the navigation is going to be a component that shows up on every page in the template. So here's where they designed the navigation component. So then here you can go in there and edit that. So here they have all this stuff going on where they have the 3 options on the nav, which you can then change. And the cool thing is you don't have to use like a link tag. So like if you ever use Next.js, you have to use that like React router, which has like this link tag that you use to do the routes. Here you just use a standard A tag. Not quite sure what they're doing there off the top of my head. Looks like they're just changing the text space, or no, they're changing the URL. Area current, what the href is about. Segment equals, okay, so if segment equals about, then do page. If not, it's undefined. So I'm just not sure what the aria current does. I've seen this before. It's just not coming back to me. I'm assuming it's a styling thing. But it's just using a ternary operator to figure out whether it's going to assign it the page value or undefined. But yeah, these are just the links. And then there's the styling. Oh, that's what it's referring to. Okay, area current. Understood. Okay, and keep in mind I just woke up, so if I sound tired, it's because I am. But that's the main layout. Literally after that, you just basically design your website. And again, if you need to create an API, you would just do that from here. From server.js using Polka. Let's actually look that up. So here's milligram. Polka.js or just JS. Okay, micro web server. So fast. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the syntax for making a route. Usage. Okay, const Polka, require Polka, function 1, rec res, next, require word, hello, next, function 2. Okay, so they're doing callbacks just straight up there. Polka.1.use 1.2, get user ID. Okay, so they're just chaining off the routes there. Listen on 3000. So let me just compare that to here in the server.js. .use, compression. So this is where they're defining the static folder using the Sirv library. Here they're saying any middleware, which I'd have to go read a little bit more to see where the middleware is coming from. I'm not sure what the compression is doing. I'm assuming it's doing some sort of compression to make the file smaller. Let's see if we can make a route and test it out. Let's go back to that syntax over here. .use. So it's not in the .use, so it's going to be chained off after that. The routes. So let's do that. Let's chain a route. So this is all in the middleware. All this stuff here, and this is just saying the Sapper specific middleware. I get it now. Okay, so this is just like the app.use in Express. So then I would do .get. And let's see here. Let's see an example. .get res.send. Okay, so that's pretty much the same as Express. Okay, so .get. We'll just make this the cheese 2 route, and we'll do rec res request and response. And it's just gonna rec.send hello. Save. Okay, and let's just give that a shot. Okay, and let's go to the root /cheese2. 404 not found. That did not work the way I expected it to, so let's go back to the documentation. Just figured this is like the last piece that I'm like not sure quite how it works. So /users /id, I get to all that. Res.end. Oh, is it res.end? Let's go further down. We're looking for the res functions. Res, type server response, routing, res.end. Yeah, okay, so that's the issue. I need to do a res.end. That's interesting. So let's go back over here. Let's hit refresh. Okay, my assumption is because it's hitting the Sapper middleware first that it's doing that. So I wonder if I put the route here. I should probably just read the docs, the Sapper docs, but I like experimenting. Okay, save. Oh, so that's prettier figured out. And let's see what happens. Oh, did I put rec.end? Res.send. So that does answer my question. It's because it hits the Sapper middleware first. It gets handled by Sapper, so I want to put my routes before the middleware. If I do need to use a custom route. Hello. So it works. And then if I go back to the route, the root route should still go back to Sapper. because the behavior is this route will not hit it, but so then it'll go through the middleware and then eventually hit the Sapper middleware. Cool. So just figured that was worth exploring, so that way we don't have to do some weird spending time switching it out with Express. Okay, we can just use what it is. And let's actually look up what that compression library does. npm compression. So everything else is pretty clear what it does, because again, Polka is what creates a server, and you can do the routes with. A Sapper server is the Sapper middleware, so that way it triggers the Sapper stuff, and then Sirv is for serving the static files out of the static folder over here. Compressor JS compression. I want to take a look at that. I mean, I can assume what this library does, but it's probably worth knowing. Alright, it's been for the following compression codes are vflate, gzip. This is no module available through the main. Right? So, middleware using given options. The middleware will attempt to compress response bodies for all requests that traverse through the middleware based on given options. Yeah, so it literally just compresses things. Now, last thing I want to test out is using the static folder to actually serve a web page. So let's say I just wanted to do like an HTML page, which it should hit, because technically it's going to check the static folder before it hits the middleware. So in that case, if I put, let's say, new file, we'll put cheese3 here, cheese3.html, and put just some HTML boilerplate, and just put an h1 that says cheese3. Save. What am I doing? Back over here. Did I save? I saved. So now if I go back to the Sapper project and I type in /cheese3.html, my expectation is it's not going to hit the route for cheese2 because it's not cheese2. Then it's going to go through the middleware, but the static middleware comes before the Sapper middleware, so it should find this cheese3.html file, actually, yeah, and run that before it tries to hit the Sapper middleware. Oh, I hit refresh. Cheese3.html, and it worked. Okay, so we're able to access that static file. Cool. So basically you have three ways to kind of determine what different pages do. You could use Polka to create routes directly, you could stick stuff in the static folder, or you can just use the svelte routes. And then if you want to do URL params, you could do it through a Polka route, or you can just do it through a slug here, like, or through it through the curly bracket files here. Not curly brackets, square brackets. And yeah, and again, you're able to do that. Where is it? What am I doing now? Here, blog. You're able to bring in that by using this preload function. So basically, you just borrow this preload function, and that'll bring in. And you see what they're doing here is that this preload brings in the entire request object. So what they're doing here is they're just destructuring the params piece and the query piece out of it instead of bringing in the whole rec object. You know, I could literally do the same thing here by just doing rec. Just make that rec, and then instead here do it rec.params that slug. Did they use a query at all before I? Good. Okay. Just didn't want to break anything else. So I hit save. Fonts res. Await this fetch. Okay. So the response. So they're saying the JSON. Okay. I get it. So if we go back to the root, and I go back to the blogs, it should still work the same. See, it still works the same because I just changed it that. So just it's a cool thing you can do with different. If you've used Next.js, you probably saw this pattern in their documentation as well, where they're destructuring the request object. That's all that's doing. Because I remember when I first saw that, I wasn't as quite familiar with the structuring, and I was just like, that's a weird syntax. But yeah, all you're doing is you're just breaking apart that object that's being passed into this function. And I mean, everything else is just now you just do your code, you do your website. Otherwise, as far as actually how you do the website, you just use Svelte syntax. I do have a separate video series on the Svelte syntax, going over Svelte events and reactive data and all that stuff. So I'm going to point you in that direction, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how this works. And then essentially when you're done and you want to deploy this, it's just deploying it via any node pack, like you would deploy any node application to Heroku. I mean, I think there are oftentimes some tweaks you have to make because of the routing aspect of it. But those are things you kind of discover along the way. And but let's see here. I'm sure there's a build command, so let's take a look at the package JSON, and then there's a build, so that way you can build it for production, and all these other commands. But I mean, that's the major thrust of it. It doesn't look that difficult. If you've used Next, if you've used Nux, I'm assuming Nest is very similar, then this is going to be very similar. It's not super crazy. But you get the smaller bundle sizes, the very simple syntax. It's very cool. So have a great day and enjoy.